So it's all about trust. They trust us, they spend money, they know that we can serve them, we can provide good customer service, we can help them solve their problems and reach their goals. So trust is everything.
Warning: Damian Andrews' growing revenue and profit, if implemented, will put more money in your pocket. Please use with caution.
Welcome to Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit with international speaker and revenue and growth specialist, Damian Andrews. This is your source for practical, usable, and simple action steps that you can do every day to put more money in your pocket. And now, the host of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, Damian Andrews.
And the crowd cheers wildly to the trumpeting blasts of elephants sliding through eyes of needles. This is Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, the program that deals with all things that puts more cash in your pocket. This is the show that handles your revenue riddles, profit puzzles, operational oddities, and culture conundrums. I am the one, the only Damian Andrews, and on this show, it is my great pleasure and honor to have the wonderful Shahab Anari. Now, Shahab has been a distinguished leader in the professional coaching industry for over 25 years, and he's renowned for his unwavering commitment to providing world-class coaching education to individuals and organizations. And over the past 25 years, Shahab has left his mark on the lives of over 3 million, yes, that's right, 3 million people in 21 countries. Shahab also remains deeply committed to giving back to the world we live in. Shahab, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Damian. It's an honor.
It's wonderful to have you here. And normally I'll dive into some questions about profit and being a profitable business easy, that kind of thing. But I want to take a little different slant here, because in my research, it shows that you've got a world record. Can you tell us a bit about that world record?
Yes, you've done your research, Damian, as expected. Yeah, that happened during COVID, believe it or not. So my wife and I, let me put some context before I share the actual story. So I own a company. It's called North Star Success. We're based in Toronto, Canada, and we offer 3 major things. So coaching, training, and publishing. So let me talk about the publishing side. My wife takes care of the publishing side. So we help people write, publish, and market their books. We've been doing that for many, many years, and we've helped more than 300 authors publish their books. But my wife takes care of that. So I'm the coaching guy. My wife is the publishing girl. During COVID, my wife and I were talking, and we were driving through one of the major streets in Toronto. You may know the name of that street, Yonge Street. It's the longest street in the world. We were driving through that street, and it was empty. Nobody was there. You know, believe it or not, if looking back at the COVID situation, the world has changed ever since. But if you remember, you know, people were locked down and nobody was coming out during a certain period.
I'm from Victoria. We were the lockdown capital of the world.
Yeah, right. So everybody was scared, locked up at home. And we were driving through this street, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, what can we do about this? Let's turn this challenge into an opportunity. What can come out of this? And it was my wife's idea, actually. She said, let's put together a book and invite people from all over the world to share the stories of kindness during COVID. And I thought it was a brilliant idea because, you know, it's just flipping the coin and looking at the bright side. Yes, COVID has taken so many lives. It has caused a lot of suffering, and people have been hit financially, personally, professionally. but there is an upside to it if you look carefully. So we started on this project. We invited people from all over the world, and we decided it was going to be a very big book with a lot of co-authors. And right then and there, we said, let's go for a Guinness World Record. Let's make it the biggest multi-author book project on the planet. And so we contacted the Guinness World Record team, and we put together a name for the project. So 184 people came together. They shared the stories of kindness and compassion during COVID in that book. And we actually broke the record, the Guinness World Record, for the most number of people signing their book online simultaneously. So that's the world record that we hold right now.
I love that. That's awesome. And that in that moment of crisis, that your thoughts were, how can we bring together some kindness and help inspire people? From that perspective, let's switch it back to the business side of things. How important is that as a character trait to business success?
You're a seasoned business coach and consultant. You have worked with individuals and corporations. You know that for sure. And I'm sharing my perspective to confirm the idea that empathy and compassion is the core characteristic of any business person who wants to be successful. You know, we might call our business B2C or B2B, but at the end of the day, it's H to H, right? It's human to human. And we might be online right now. We might be doing this podcast. You're in Melbourne. I'm in Toronto. We might not be together in person. But at the end of the day, it's a human-to-human connection that we have here, and we have to your audience, right?
Yes.
So if we look at the relationship in business situations from that standpoint, which is one human is trying to build trust with another human, and they are trying to solve the problem of another human, then empathy and compassion is a core characteristic. And if we just go for the cutthroat techniques in business and just maximize the profit for the sake of maximizing profit, I believe that's a strategy that works in the short run, but not a long game.
The word that you use there, the T word, trust, building trust. And when we talk about sales in business, how important is it to build that trust, and what are things that you can do to build that trust?
That's a great question. The first part of your question, how important is it? I think it's the most important thing in business, because if you don't have trust, you have nothing. If people don't trust you, you don't have a business, right?
Yeah.
And if any of us looks back at our most loyal customers and clients, the best customers and clients that we've ever had, most probably those are the ones that we've built the most trust with. So it's all about trust. They trust us, they spend money, they know that we can serve them, we can provide good customer service, we can help them solve their problems and reach their goals. So trust is everything. I believe trust is number one. It's kind of the foundation on which everything else is built. That's my personal opinion. And how to build trust, there are so many ways to do this. I go back to the trust quotient, the formula. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So it's the trust quotient says reliability plus. Let me remember. Let me share the ingredients of that quotient, because I can't remember the formula exactly. So the important things that goes into the trust quotient, one of them is reliability, which means when you say something, you deliver on that promise. When you say that you'll be there at 5 p.m., you're there at 5 p.m. or even earlier, right? If you say that I'll do something for you as my customer or client, you will always deliver on that promise. So one is that aspect. The other aspect is credibility. So how credible are you? Have you written a book? Have you appeared on media? Have you done public speaking? How credible are you? Do you have a related background to the area where you're operating? Do you have credentials? Do you have a certificate? Do you have academic degrees? So the second part is credibility. The third part is intimacy. And intimacy, I don't mean personal intimacy in the sense of, emotional intimacy. It means being vulnerable. So intimacy means being vulnerable and being honest and having integrity. And that is the key point, If we can build that intimate professional relationship with the person in front of us and show them that we have our own vulnerabilities as well. We have our own weaknesses. We have our own, demons in our minds and worries and fears. Then we're connecting to them at a human level. And the other aspect is self-centeredness, which works reversely and inversely to building trust, which means the more self-centered you are, the less trust you can build. If everything you say is all about you, if everything you say is all about your business and maximizing your profit and building your business, and you're not thinking of other people as human beings, going back to the used car salesperson's analogy, then you're damaging the trust. So the trust quotient, I now remember the whole formula. Trust equals reliability plus credibility plus intimacy divided by self-centeredness.
I love that. It sounds a little old school, though. And when we're talking about, the young people, the young listeners that are listening to the podcast, and you see shows like Wolf of Wall Street and those kind of things, is it really that, or how do we get over that perception to go, actually, these old world principles are actually still just as valid today for someone that's starting out? Say a young person out there is listening, they want to start a business, they've watched Wolf of Wall Street and they're going, oh, they've seen all that looks really cool, except for the banged up Lamborghini. I cried when I saw that. But from that perspective, how do we get them to understand that it is these core principles that actually give you the biggest bang for your buck?
That's a great question. And thank you for asking that. I would offer two answers to that question. First of all, look what happened to Jordan Belfort. Yes, Wolf of the Wall Street works in the short term.
Yeah,
it does. It works in the short term. But if you're playing the long game, that's not the way to build relationships and to make a name in the market and, to build a meaningful career. So even if you look at if you watch the Wolf of the Wall Street movie or you read the book, you know what happened to Jordan Belfort at the end.
Well, I'm assuming the young people haven't got that far because their attention span is too short. Sorry, young people, but
love that. So number one, I would say play the long game. And number two, the second answer is that being compassionate and trying to build trust can go hand in hand with building a profitable business. They are not opposite each other. They're not extremely different things. Going back to what Jim Collins shares in his books, the landmark books of Good to Great and Built to Last, for your audience, I'm going to, for those of your audience who are not familiar with Jim Collins' books, Jim Collins is a Stanford professor who did these big studies on visionary companies, the biggest companies on the planet. And with a very big team, they did research on the common traits and shared characteristics of these big companies. Companies like Motorola, McDonald's, Walmart, those types of companies. Companies that have been around for more than 50 years and they have been, profitable for most of their lifetime, and they have built great cultures and so on and so forth. And you see that one of the main characteristics that is shared among these big companies is adherence to core ideology.
Ooh.
So it's not about just the profit. Just let's make sales and grow revenue and grow the business. That's important, of course. We are here to make a profit and to build something profitable. But that's not the only thing. Another shared characteristic among all those profitable companies is adherence to core ideology, and most of them have core ideologies around service, helping people, ethics, and those types of things. And for those younger people in your audience, I highly recommend that they read the books by Jim Collins, which are really important books in the managerial world.
I love that. Great answer. From that perspective, we step into things more practical now for those listening, wanting to start a business. I've experienced, I worked a number of years in corporate recovery, dealing with businesses that were in financial distress. So I know this firsthand because I've seen it, but I've also noticed, and it's quite common in there, that one of the key reasons businesses fail is undercapitalization. They start with not enough capital, and optimism bias kicks in there because we think we've got enough to do that. How does someone, when you're looking at how you started your business and the businesses that you've helped start up, how do you work out what is the right level of capital that you need to be able to sustain that first period when you're really hustling, trying to get the customers in the door, trying to create your name? What sort of measure can someone use to know what level of capital they should keep so that that's not a constraint for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to clarify the area of business coaching and consulting that I operate in, I mainly offer coaching education related courses. And I offer coaching services to business owners. So my area of operation is a little bit different from some of the bigger corporations out there. And my focus is in the coaching industry. So we offer coaching education that is accredited by ICF, International Coaching Education. And I'm sharing this because in my area of expertise and in my field, you literally don't need any capital to start because you're trying to make money from your knowledge, from your life experience, from your skills. And there are types of businesses that don't need that much of, starting capital, especially those people who are experts, creators, influencers, people who want to be, specifically in my field, coaches, consultants, trainers. And that is one of the upsides of being in my field, just to put a plug for the coaching industry. That's one of the good things, because if you want to start like in the IT industry, if you want to start a manufacturing business, if you want to start a brick and mortar restaurant, you need a starting capital. That's for sure. But if you want to start in the coaching industry, other than investing in the training and getting the credentials, other than that, it's mostly dependent on you to organize your thoughts, organize your IP, doing some marketing and sales. And I believe, in my years of experience as a coach, I've been in the training industry for 25 years and in the coaching industry actively in the last 9 years. And I've been in the leadership of the ICF for a few years now. I'm just sharing with you so that people know I'm not a newbie in the field. I've seen that even up to $1 million in sales, you can do it on your own. I don't recommend that. I always recommend people build teams and hire agencies to help them grow faster. But even if you want to do it on your own, you can scale to $1 million in sale just on your own. I did it myself, and I've seen a lot of my clients do it just by themselves. So in my industry, the good news is that you don't need a big starting capital. And if you get trained, and if you get certified, and if you gather experience, then you can pretty much become successful within 2 or 3 years.
I love that. Great answer. Thank you. And thank you for clarifying as well. I appreciate that you took that step to clarify that industry that you work in, because it is very dependent on which industry that you are in. From that perspective as well, starting the business, one of the key things that you need to do is find some customers. When you're starting that trip and going down the road looking for the customers, is there a way that people can focus on identifying who are the quality customers? And what I mean by that, a group of plumbers that I know, they had a $15 million turnover business as 3 guys, but they're working flat out, constantly busy, and then they decided that was enough, and they decided they're going to get rid of what they considered the bad clients. And as a result, their revenue dropped by a third. They went from $15 million to $10 million turnover, which is a significant drop, but they got their time back. So they only worked 5 days a week. But the bonus, and they said they weren't expecting this, and I believe in that they weren't, was their profit went up. So when you're starting a new business, obviously it's very fragile. You've got to get things happening quickly. How can you identify what are those quality customers that are going to give you the decent profit and not give you too many headaches?
That's a great question. So many things come to my mind when I want to answer this question, going back to my own experience and going back to my successful clients' experiences. One, try to sell high-ticket items. Raise your prices, number one. Yeah. Because if you sell cheap and if you offer, cheap products and services, and by cheap, I mean inexpensive. I don't mean low quality. Inexpensive packages, whatever that is, if it's a product or a service, inevitably, sometimes you will attract low quality customers and clients.
Yeah.
So one of the key things that has helped me over the past few years is that I got rid of my inexpensive offers, which I had in the beginning for a few years. And I've moved to mid-tier and high-tier packages. So that's one thing. And I've come to experience it firsthand when you offer high-ticket offers, more expensive packages, more quality people, higher quality people get attracted to you. That's number one. Number two, especially for those who are starting out, you just need to test. Marketing is testing. You may come up with a short list of target clients, target audience groups that you may think are a good fit for you and your business. You may come up with a short list of 3, 5, 10 different segments, but eventually you need to go out in the market and test your ideas. And after a few months with this segment, you will see that this is a great segment. But after a few months with that segment, you will see that it's not working. So I believe testing is very, very important, as all of you know, and you are the expert in this field, Damien. We always talk about A/B testing. We always talk about you cannot be 100% sure if this ad campaign is going to work. You need to test it and watch it and observe it and tweak it and make it perfect. You can't be perfect right at the beginning. So that's the second point. And the other point that helps people clarify their ideal clients in my field, I'm not saying it is relevant to all fields, but in my field is for coaches, consultants, trainers, I encourage them to look for people who represent their past. So the coach, the client, the coach, the consultant, the trainer is trying to help a group of people. Those people, if they are their ideal clients, could represent the coaches and the consultants' past because they've been there before. They've come over that hurdle. They have overcome that adversity. They've been there. They've done that. And those people who represent the coach's past can trust the coach because they have they have the lived experience. So for coaches and consultants, I highly recommend that they target the group of people who represent their past.
Great advice, that I love that. From that perspective as well, when we're talking about marketing, there's so many different ways out there that you can reach people, so many different platforms. Even in social media, there's how many different platforms, from LinkedIn to Twitter to TikTok, all these different platforms. Then you've got, you know, things like radio and TV for advertising, print ads, leaflets, direct mail, so many different ways of doing that. And I bring this up because a friend of mine here in Australia has a very large retail tile business selling tiles. And when he started his business, he started advertising on radio, and he kind of got talked into it. And initially he did a couple of ads and it didn't work. And then he did one and made a slight little tweak and gave himself a very unique voice. He's known, you know, here, his name's Frank Walker, and he has a business called National Tiles, but he was like, "Hello, Frank Walker from National Tiles." And it's not how he normally speaks, but it caught on. Now, in talking with him about his business, he said, for the entire time he was running the business, his son's taken over now, but the entire time he was running the business, he only ever advertised on radio, only, never print, never posters, never anything like that. And he built this reputation, partly with a name too. It was never a national business. It still isn't a national business. It's very large, but not a national business, but it's called National Tiles. How important is it when you're marketing to really, is it better to focus like Frank did and nail one area and do that really well, or is it better to be more broad in how you go about your marketing?
That's a wonderful question. I think it totally depends on the business first. So yes, for some types of businesses, for example, if you own a brick and mortar physical location, most probably Google Ads works for you. But if you own a completely different type of business, for example, an online business which is global, not necessarily Google Ads are going to work for you, right? So it depends on the business, which channel works for whom. The other important thing to consider is that the world has changed.
Yes.
So a lot of marketing strategies used to work 10, 20, 30 years before. I've been in business for 25 years. The things that used to work for me even 10 years ago, they're not working anymore, or they're not working as efficiently anymore. So the world has changed. I believe in today's world, in general, talking generally, most businesses will succeed if they take the multi-channel marketing methodology. So in today's world, we need to be multi-channel. I believe it's not enough to just focus on, let's say, billboards or radio or just Instagram or just LinkedIn. We need to be multi-channel. Of course, going back to the 80-20 rule, most probably 80% of our business will eventually come from 20% of those activities. Maybe Instagram works best for me, or LinkedIn works best for somebody else, or podcast works best for you. I'm just assuming. But we need to be omnipresent. And the reason for that is we don't own those platforms. If we focus just on Instagram may go away someday. It may blow up. It may the founders may decide to close it down. That's a possibility. Or the algorithm may change. And you get banned for some reason, and you get hacked out of your account. Things happen. You don't own that account. You don't own that platform, even if it seems so. You don't own it.
Yes.
Again, the radio example, for some reason, somebody may bid you out. Some competitor may come and, ban you from, advertising on radio, or whatever other thing may happen. So it's too risky, in my humble opinion, to focus on just one channel. It doesn't mean that if one channel is working for you, just ignore it and start working on other irrelevant channels. I don't mean that. I mean, do focus on the channel that is working for you, but have the omni-channel marketing methodology in mind and try to be active in other channels as well.
What I heard there, if I was listening correctly, I'm practicing my active listening here, is linking it back to my friend Frank as well. When he started, he tried a number of different channels, and then radio worked, and so that's what he's stuck with. And from what I'm hearing from what you're saying as well, is you mentioned about testing your marketing. So part of it is having that omni-channel approach, if I'm hearing correctly, and then being aware of what's working and what's not working, and as something works, shift your focus there, but also be, as you said, don't put yourself all your eggs in one basket. So that especially today with social media, as you say, when an algorithm changes it, and I've heard of many businesses have been killed because an algorithm changed. Did I hear that?
You hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I meant.
Awesome. I passed my listening test today. That's great. So from that perspective, if we're taking that further from that marketing side of things, it's a very, very busy world. As you know, there's so much out there. There's so many touch points and so much contact. How does someone make themselves stand out in this world to grab attention, apart from having a really awesome intro to your podcast? So,
yeah, of course. So I have written a book on this topic. It's called The How of Personal Branding. And this is a topic that I feel passionate about, the idea of personal branding, especially in my space, as you can imagine, in the coaching consulting space. It is very important to stand out. Not for the sake of standing out, because if you don't differentiate yourself, you will drown in the sea of sameness and nobody will notice you, especially if you're just starting out. You need to build your personal brand. You need to set yourself apart from your competitors. And that's a very, very important thing in our industry, the expert industry, and in any industry, because if you can't stand out from your competitors, then you will need to focus on things like, I'm a little bit cheaper, or my quality is a little bit higher, which rarely works because everybody is saying I'm a little bit cheaper, my price is right, and my quality is great. That's not something to focus on when you're trying to differentiate yourself. So you need to find a way to stand out from the crowd. And in my book, I always, and in my classes, I always talk about my methodology, which is 3 C's. And the 3 C's stand for 3 words: clarify, communicate, close. It's a simple concept. You need to clarify your value proposition first, exactly define what you do, who you do it for, and how you're different. And then the second C, communicate. You need to have the omni-channel marketing methodology and, clarify which channels you want to focus on, which starts with testing, as you said. And the third C is close, which is all about persuasion and sales. How can you use the psychology of sales and the human relationship principles to build trust and persuade people to take action and use your product and service to reach their goals? Going back to the specific question of how can we stand out, I believe one of the key things that people can use to help them find their differentiation in the market is, first of all, focus on their lived experiences, their life story, or the story of their company. So storytelling, that's number one. Storytelling is something that they can use to set themselves apart from the rest. Because my life story, even if I might be in the same space as you or somebody else, is completely different from yours or any other person's. So life stories are always different. And telling the stories of yourself or your company or similar stories can set you apart. That's number one. And the second part is doing research on your competitors. If you want to stand out from the crowd, you need to know who your competitors are, because you want to differentiate yourself from them. If you don't know what they're saying and what they're offering, how can you stand out from them? And that goes to the principle of positioning, which we talk about in the branding world. You need to position yourself in the market so that you can set yourself apart from the rest. Just like, 7-Up came into the market and called themselves Uncola to position themselves against Coca-Cola and Pepsi, right? So life story and positioning, in my opinion, are the best ways to create distinction.
I love that. And a life story, as you said, you're such a wealth of knowledge. I love this. You this whole point of positioning and being unique. If you're telling your life story, like you said, no one's got that life story, even if you're in the same category. That's awesome. And from that, the third C that you mentioned in closing, and sales is something that I find I'm really passionate about, and I love that from that perspective. I used to hate it, but I love it now. And I'm wondering from that perspective, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for that magic genie in the lamp. You find this one, this one line, this one close, and it's going to solve everything and it's going to change your world. Is it really like that? Or is it something else that is the one thing that makes sales work, the closing part of sales work?
I don't think there is one thing that makes people successful salespeople. There is no such one thing. At least I haven't discovered that one thing yet, or one line yet. Sales is a skill. As you know, you're a professional, you're a seasoned salesperson, business coach. Sales is a skill. And just like any other skill, like learning to ride a bike, learning to play the piano, learning to coach, as you and I do, it's a skill. We need to learn the principles and practice. And be consistently practicing, and over time getting feedback from others, especially from coaches, and correcting ourselves and practicing again. So it's all about learning the principles and putting in deliberate practice. Of course, there are tips and tricks in psychology that you can use to close better. There are certain words and certain sentences and certain ideas that you can use to sell more. For example, I realized early on, many years ago, that if I introduce urgency into my sales conversation, for example, if I say there's only 2 more left, or this offer is valid by the end of this week only, that propels people to action. Yes, there are those types of things. So I can't deny that there are tips and tricks and sentences and words that make people, take action. But it's not just about tips and tricks and, magic sentences to close the sales or overcome objections. I personally believe it's the art of persuasion. It's the art of building trust. And the art of using psychology to help people make the best decision for themselves. What do you think? I'm curious to know.
Oh, you're interviewing me. I love that. Yeah, I think you covered it off with the trust word again. Part of the whole component of sales, how I see it, is that it's about you're solving a problem, and do they trust that you can solve that problem for them? And from my experience, it's more about answering their questions and focusing on, do they trust me that I can deliver what I say I'm going to deliver? And I treat that as being the closing component. I'm proving to you that I can do that. And after that, from my experience, majority of people are saying that let's proceed with this, rather than me trying to close them. That's the trust word that you said. It's about building that trust. But from that perspective, when you look at sales and when we're dealing with that, what would you say is the biggest thing that holds people back, the biggest misconception that holds people back in respect of sales?
I believe there are, at least in my experience, I have a sales team working for me in my company. From my experience and the experience of training those people in my company, I've seen 2 major things holding people back from becoming great salespeople? Number one, fear of rejection, right? Just like any other bold move in our lives, we are afraid that people may not like us or may treat us badly or may say something that will hurt us and things like that. So fear of rejection is the number one thing that holds salespeople back. So they think, if I reach out to this prospect, or if I call them, or if I send an email, they may ignore me, or they may write something nasty to me, or they may hang up on me. And they fear that situation. That's number one. Number two is the fact that a lot of salespeople, amateur salespeople, those who are just beginning, and I was like that in the beginning as well. So I'm not trying to judge people. I'm just sharing the truth that in the beginning, a lot of us as salespeople tend to be overly passionate about our products and services, and when we enter the sales conversation, we spend the most time talking about how great our product and service is. But going back to the point that you made, sales is mostly about asking questions. It's not about talking and speaking about how great we are and how wonderful our product and service is. 70-80% of the sales conversation should be the salesperson asking questions and listening carefully for the true needs and wants of the prospect. Not for the sake of manipulating them afterwards, but for the sake of being able to help them solve that problem. So the second thing that holds a lot of salespeople back, especially in the beginning, is that they're overly passionate, they talk too much, and they listen very little.
I love that you included passionate in there as well, because a lot of times it is that passion, but the lack of skill to realize that, hey, it's not about blurting out what you think is great. It's use that passion to find out what they really need. But passion is absolutely critical. Let's shift gears a little bit and move into some of the more boring admin-y type stuff with being successful and growing revenue and profit. And I say that facetiously because to me, I consider it to be one of the most important things. Now, as you mentioned before, you're a husband. And if my research is correct, I'm double checking, you've got 2 sons. And from what I understand, giving back and family is really important to you. So when we're talking about work-life balance, time management is really, really critical. And I know from my experience, it is not something that people generally focus on when they're thinking about being a successful business. There's this whole concept of how many business people have you met that are working flat out, working hard, and they're all talking about got to work hard to succeed. Yet we've all heard that statement, work smarter, not harder. Now, in my mind, good time management will enable you to work smarter and focus on the things that are going to give you the maximum bang for your buck. I had to be careful there, but you're in Canada, you have dollars there too. So otherwise,
I noticed your hesitation.
Bang for your pen. But from that perspective, when you're looking at your day and how you manage your day to get that maximum return, I call it ROE, return on effort. To get the maximum return on effort, how do you manage your time so that you can get those critical things done and then still have the time with the family and loved ones that you want to have as well?
That's a wonderful question. And it was a hard lesson that I learned over the years. At the beginning, I was all over the place. I was trying to make any money and that I could put my hands on, and it's like that when you're beginning. You want to build that business, you want to get going, because most probably you've come from a different background. Maybe you were an employee before, or you were just right out of college and you're building this business. So obviously it makes sense that you're putting in more hours and your life is out of balance. You're putting in more into your business rather than your personal relationships and so on and so forth. So in the beginning, it's kind of like that. But after a few years, I realized I can't go on like this. And at some point, I realized I need to set boundaries and parameters and define exactly how I want to run my days. And going back to the very important word that you used, boring, my schedule is very boring. It looks 99% the same, 95% the same, week over week over week. I have a very clear schedule and very clear time slots on my schedule, which changes very little over the year. So Mondays, I have a pretty much consistent schedule on Mondays throughout the year. I know that, okay, this is the time slot for me to see my clients. This is the time slot to do training. This is the time slot to work with my team. This is the time slot for me to study something, and so on and so forth. And that doesn't change. And I do have some legroom in my schedule. For example, for these types of conversations, for interviews, for some odd thing that might happen. But I would say more than 90% of my schedule is very boring, very consistent, and doesn't change that much. And I believe that is the key to sanity. That is the key to time management, right? Because as a business owner, there are so many demands on your time. A lot of people want attention from you, whether it's your clients, your customers, your team members, other people who want to work with you, shiny objects. Everything new is coming into this to the scene. A few weeks ago, Threads opened up in the social media space. So there are so many things trying to get your attention. And if you don't have that routine deeply grounded in your schedule, you will get distracted and you won't be able to get much done. So I have a very boring, consistent schedule that I try to stick to every week.
And that answer in so many levels is very, very powerful. And for the listeners listening to that is quite amazing. And it applies across so many different things, because what you're talking about, the shiny thing that you mentioned about that, and being able to get your mindset into that space. Because I know this from my own perspective. One of the hats that I wear, I manage a private equity company. And the investment process there is mind-numbingly boring. It is so, and it's very simple. But it's by that simple makes it boring. It literally takes me a couple of hours a month to work on this, yet we're getting massive returns. It was 2021, 51%, 2022, 63%, and we're tracking towards 50% this year as well. That's cash in the bank. And it's not Bitcoin. So just clarifying, it is boring. How hard was it to get to that state where this shiny thing, you go, okay, I've just got to be routine. I've got to do this routine, and I'm not going to get distracted by that. How did you do that? How did you make that shift to go, no more shiny things, this is routine? Was it a bigger picture goal, or what enabled you to do that?
It was a work in progress, and it took a few years, for me to clarify that schedule. So just like I mentioned, and I'm truthful about this, I was all over the place in the beginning. So I was trying stuff out. And I believe the way to get to this specific time management framework and schedule and calendar, however you may call it, is to try things out. Because most probably a lot of business people in the beginning, they don't exactly know what their brand is. They don't exactly know what their best offer is. They don't exactly know what who their ideal client is. So they need to test things out. They have an idea, but they're not perfectly clear. So over time, it gets more and more clear. These are my priorities. These are the things that need to be on my schedule. These are the things that give me return on investment, return on effort, return on energy.
Yeah.
So over time, it became more and more clear to me what my priorities are. And now I know, okay, these are my priorities in terms of growing my business, building relationships, things that are important to me. Those might be different for you or somebody else, but for me, growing my business, building my relationships, attending to my health, taking care of my family, those are important things to me. So I tend to make time for those things. And this doesn't have to be the same for everybody else, because some people may have different values. They may not have a family. They may be living on their own. Things might be different for them, or their type of business might be different. So I'm not saying everybody should follow my strategy, but the overall concept is define your priorities, build a routine, and stick to that routine.
I love that. Awesome. Sticking with the boring admin-y type stuff, although this one's a little bit more exciting. When you talk about running the business, a lot of people get stuck in that day-to-day grind. Yet there is the statement out there that you should spend time working on your business, not in your business. What's your experience with that, and how would you advise people? Well, one, is it important? And two, if it is, how would you advise people to go about that?
I have that experience firsthand. In the first few years, it was me and only me in the business trying to do everything. Michael Gerber talks about this phenomenon in his wonderful book, E-Myth, Entrepreneurial Myth. He says that in every business, there's an entrepreneur, there is a manager, and there's a technician.
Yes.
And in the beginning, one person is wearing all those hats.
Yes.
They are the entrepreneur who started the business. They are the manager that, runs everything about the business. And they are the technician. They actually do the work.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I was just like that. I was the coach / trainer doing the work. I was the manager taking care of the booking and finances and marketing and sales and everything. And I was the entrepreneur, the one who actually created the idea and built the business. But over time, I realized that I can't go on like this. I don't have time to do everything. I don't have the expertise to do everything, because I'm a good coach and trainer. But it doesn't mean that I'm a really great marketer as well. I'm a really great accountant as well. I'm not. I hate accounting. That's why I gradually hired accountants. I hired a couple of marketing agencies to do my marketing work for me. Over the past year, I've hired the sales team. Even I've delegated sales to them. I still train them, but I've delegated sales. And this frees me up, and I plan on hiring more people as well. This frees me up to do the work that I'm really good at, and find people to do those types of work where I suck and they're good at, so that overall, as a team, we can grow better and faster.
Awesome. And from that perspective, I know we've got to wind up soon because I know you have an appointment, but can you tell us a little bit about, this is your product placement type thing. What is it, the services that you offer? How do you help people? How can people contact you? What products, services that are there for them?
Thank you for that question. My company is called North Star Success. We're based in Toronto, Canada, but we have a global clientele. So there are two things that we offer at my company. One is we offer coaching education courses. We are accredited by ICF, International Coaching Federation. So we certify coaches, we train coaches, we help them become professional coaches. That's one thing. And the other thing is the publishing part, which my wife takes care of. And that is the part where we hold the Guinness World Record. So we help people
behind you, I can
write.
see it.
Yeah, that's over here. So we help people write, publish, and market their books. And we have wonderful projects, whole books, multi-author books. At this moment, we are doing a multi-author project with Brian Tracy, the world-renowned author. He has agreed to write the introduction to this book.
Awesome.
So we're doing phenomenal things in the publishing world as well. And those are the two areas where we focus on: coaching, education, and publishing.
I love that. And we'll put those details in the show notes for the listeners, so you can find all that detail about North Star and the publishing as well. And we'll have that there for you to contact you. Before we go, if you could sum it up, something that you think is the most valuable piece of information that the audience could take away from this interview, what would that be? What would, in a nutshell, what would you want them to take away that's going to be the most transformative thing in their life?
Business is a human-to-human endeavor. Try to build a trusting relationship with the person in front of you and play the long game.
Awesome. So succinct and so powerful. Shahab, it's been such a wonderful chat with you. Amazing stuff. I love the work you're doing, and I love the knowledge that you've shared with the listeners. So authentic. I call it authentism. I'm making up words, but I'm going to get it in the dictionary eventually. But thank you, Shahab, for taking the time to be on the show.
Thanks for having me on your show.